All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're looking at a pretty radical idea, the claim that the sacred stories of the Quran are actually built on a hidden mathematical code. It's a really fascinating theory, so let's get into it.
I mean, just imagine for a second. What if the stories of the prophets, from Adam all the way to Muhammad, weren't just a collection of separate tales, but were actually interlocking pieces of a giant cosmic puzzle? A puzzle held together by numbers. That's the core idea we're going to explore. So, where does this all come from? Well, the key to this whole thing is a book called Buku Tamujani Yusuf, which translates to the Book of Joseph's Appointment. And believe me, it is an incredibly ambitious, detailed attempt to map out what the author truly believes is a hidden numerical architecture inside the Quran itself. So, what does this hidden universe of numbers and faith even look like? Well, the author starts with a really unique structure for his work. What's so interesting is that the author presents his findings in two completely different ways. First, you've got the Buku, that's the prose book, full of detailed analytical breakdowns of all the numbers. But then you also have the Sajak, a companion book of poetry that's all about capturing the spiritual feeling of these stories. It's this amazing blend of, left brain logic and right brain artistry. Okay, so if you're going to build a whole system like this, you need a toolkit, right? Let's take a look at the fundamental building blocks of his entire theory. The spiritual cornerstone, the absolute bedrock of this entire system, is the Islamic concept of Tawheed. That's the belief in the absolute, indivisible oneness of God. For the author, every single calculation, every pattern he finds, is meant to point directly back to this one profound truth. He argues it's the single unifying message of all the prophets. Now, for the structure, everything, and I mean everything, kicks off with the number 5. The author calls his core framework the Pentagon system. Just picture a master grid, a 5x5 matrix. This is the foundation. And what fits so neatly into that 5x5 grid? Exactly 25 prophets. Why 25? Because that's precisely the number of prophets specifically named in the Quran. For the author, this is no coincidence. It's the very first clue that there's a deliberate design at play here. Another key number is 114. That's the total number of chapters, or surahs, in the Quran. The author uses this number as a kind of mathematical anchor for his whole system. He points to calculations like taking the number 19, which he sees as highly symbolic, and multiplying it by 6 to get, you guessed it, 114. He argues this is evidence of a coherent, divine harmony. Okay, so let's just pause for a second and put the pieces together. The author takes the 25 prophets, he fits them into that 5x5 pentagon grid, and then he uses a multiplier number, like 19, to try and connect everything back to other important totals in the Quran, like it's 114 chapters. These are really the core ingredients of his system. And this isn't just some random number crunching. For every single one of the prophets, the author follows the exact same 5-step blueprint. He introduces the prophet's context, he writes a 5-line poem, he analyzes scripture, then he presents his math, and finally, he pulls out a moral lesson. It's a very systematic, very structured way to guide the reader through his argument. All right, so that's the theory. But how does this all work in practice? Let's zoom in on a case study and see how the system gets built, using the book's namesake, the prophet Yusuf, who you might know as Joseph. So, following his own method, the author starts Yusuf's chapter with that 5-line poetic core. This poem really sets the stage. It touches on Yusuf's being mentioned 27 times, his prophetic dreams, the incredible trials he faces, and his eventual triumph. And from all of that, one central theme emerges: patience. So, the crucial takeaway for the prophet Yusuf is kesabaran, which means patience. Now, here's the author's central claim. He argues that the numbers associated with Yusuf's story in the Quran are not random at all. He believes they are divinely structured to numerically reinforce this very lesson of patience through suffering. So how in the world does he try to prove patience with math? Well, here's how he breaks it down. He starts with the 27 times Yusuf is mentioned. He combines that with the number 7 from the 7 stars in Yusuf's dream. He then runs these calculations, like multiplying 7 by 7 or 5 by 27, and claims the results, like 42 or 135, link directly to significant verse numbers in Yusuf's chapter. In his view, it's this web of interconnected math that proves the theme was intentional all along. So we've gone deep into the what and the how of this system, but that still leaves the biggest question of all. Why? Why go to all this trouble? What is the author ultimately trying to achieve with this grand design? And, the author is actually really upfront about his intentions. In the book's epilogue, he lays out his purpose very clearly. He wants to do more than just find cool patterns. His real goal is to reveal what he sees as the Quran's hidden mathematical beauty, to use these numbers to reinforce timeless lessons like patience and justice, and to show how the stories of all 25 prophets are really part of a single, unified journey. It's meant to be a kind of roadmap for the reader's faith. And really, it all boils down to this one simple but powerful idea, which the author captures perfectly with a quote from his conclusion. The message is pretty clear. The Quran isn't just a book to be read. It's a text to be deeply reflected upon. And for this author, his numerical system is simply one path to that deeper reflection, and ultimately to guidance. So whether you're convinced by the author's specific math or not, this work kind of leaves us with a much bigger thought, doesn't it? This quest for hidden codes and numerical structures in ancient sacred texts, it's not unique. What does this deep-seated impulse tell us about our own fundamental human desire to find order in what feels like chaos, to find meaning, and maybe even to believe that behind the surface of our world, there lies a deeper, more intentional design?